Welcome back, Burnout teachers. Today's lesson will be about why you are burnt out and 5 easy steps that you can take to make a change as a teacher. I wanted to share with you all some of the steps that I share with a lot of teachers and schools that I work with. I do a lot of work managing teachers and helping teachers feel more heard in the educational space and they don't feel so burnt out. Number 1 would be to reduce your hours. I think that it's very easy to get burnt out as a teacher when you're constantly in the classroom and for long periods of time. And I think that even the greatest of teachers, if in the classroom the whole day, anybody is going to get burnt out.
We're expected to do more and more for less.
Larger class sizes,
classroom sizes,
class sizes.
I don't know of any other position that you're expected to take on almost 4 times the workload with no additional compensation, and it makes it quite difficult.
I kind of compromised being a lead teacher and instead chose to take a floater position. And I really like this because it enabled me to be able to work with different age groups and also kind of jump around to different classrooms. I also think then if you're working as a floater, you then have the flexibility to be able to be involved in the educational field outside of teaching in the classroom. So there's so many ways as teachers that we can stay engaged in education without solely limiting it to actually in-classroom experience. So what I try to do is I try to pair my educational consulting work with also my in-class teaching. But if I am only teaching in the classroom, the probability that I will engage in those other activities is a lot less because I'll feel very exhausted and tired from all the day-to-day things that I need to go do in the classroom. So the reason why a floater position I think is preferable because you don't have the responsibilities to do the lesson plans. You can kind of just jump into the environment and follow what the lead teacher and the assistant are doing. And it also allows you to get still a lot of in-classroom teaching experience. For having less hours in the classroom, it can make the quality of the time that you're engaging with your students better as opposed to feeling exhausted for a long period of time throughout the day. Some of the ways in which I'm engaging in education and teaching outside of the classroom is by doing educational consulting with different schools in the DC area. And this allows me to work with teachers and managing teachers and helping them, their organizations grow and stay organized and stay consistent with their deadline. And also how to engage students and helping them with curriculum and lesson planning. And then also connecting them with community organizations. So that's an example of the type of work that I do when I'm not necessarily in the classroom that will help and inform my teaching practice, but will also allow me to not feel burnt out by being in the classroom the entire day. Number 2 would be decide on your non-negotiables. There's certain things in your life that must be in place for you to feel purpose and feel happy. And for me, I would say some of those examples are I have to work out. I have to have ample time in the morning to really set the stage for my day. So I don't like to be rushed in the morning. I like to be able to have like a quiet breakfast and be able to drink my coffee slowly and really have the time to write in my journal and kind of reflect on what I need to do for the day. And if I don't have that time in the morning, I feel like I'm not able to give my full self during the day in my work. When I'm teaching English and tutoring students, I make sure to schedule my students at a time that is conducive, that will not disrupt those non-negotiables. For other people, it could be like, having time to cook your lunch or being at home to cook lunch. For other people, it would be having time to spend time with your kids, having time to go hang out with friends and family. And a lot of those things are really important to our happiness and to create a level of balance in our life. So I would say make sure that you're honoring those non-negotiables. And just remember, these non-negotiables, some people think it's entitled or it's like you can't have everything you want. But really, these are the things that kind of allow you to be a stable person. And you really need to honor your own mental health, especially as a teacher. Because so much of our work involves our own emotions and what we're doing and our well-being. And if we're not fully present and honoring what we need as individuals, it's going to be very hard for us to give to our students. Number 3 would be to let go of the guilt. I think when we honor ourselves as teachers and our own well-being, we start to feel bad that we're letting our students down. And I just want to let all the teachers out there know that by honoring what you need as a teacher, that is in service of your students. Because if you're not allowed to be there fully, if you're not fully present for your students because you're tired or stressed out or you're burnt out, that is going to be a disservice to your students because you're not going to be giving your full self in the classroom.
I felt really guilty. A huge amount of guilt. Guilt.
It's a lot of guilt.
The guilt that I feel.
It was really surprisingly heavy.
I feel like crying right now just even talking about it.
Is really hard. It's really hard for me to make a decision that feels selfish, to leave them when they need me the most.
So if that means that you have to reduce the quantity and replace that with quality, I think that's much more meaningful. And I tell that to all the teachers that I work with. I say it's much better for you to be fully present with your students for 3 hours, give them everything you have, really be enjoying the experience of teaching and engaging and learning with them, rather than you being there the whole day and just completely checked out because you're just so overworked and exhausted. So just know that your mental health does matter and you don't need to feel guilty about anything. By taking care of yourself, you are also taking care of your students because you're unable to help anyone if you don't first take care of yourself. Number 4 is to set boundaries. I think as teachers, because we're very caring individuals, we have a tendency to say yes a lot to people because we want to help. And I think that can be to parents, that can be to fellow teachers, that can be to administration. And I feel especially when you're in an educational environment where there's a lot of stress already and a lot of responsibility on administrators and teachers, people try to kind of throw responsibilities at you and make it hard for you to say no. And I think that you really have to honor what you can do as an individual. Yeah, maybe in hindsight you think, okay, it's not anything big, I can just do it. But really you need to know what your boundaries are and what you can take on and understand and look in the long term. Don't just think in the short term. Don't just think, oh, okay, right now I'm feeling good, so like I can do a bunch of other things and take on more responsibilities. I think really learn how to say no. Say it in a way that still establishes like a positive environment in the school, but without overworking yourself. And also with parents, I think parents, they can put a lot of pressure on us as teachers because they too are stressed about the development of their kids. And just knowing how to have those conversations where you let the parents feel heard and give them a space where they can vent, but then also make sure that conversation is not a grounds for them to guilt you into doing things. In the case of administrators, sometimes administrators want to give us extra responsibilities because they feel like we're doing good, and we take that as like, wow, they're impressed with what I'm doing. And obviously that's a positive thing, and you want to be able to uphold those responsibilities by leadership so that you can grow in the environment where you are. But I would also just say, make sure that that's not taking a toll on your mental health. I think sometimes we become so absorbed in rising in our profession and kind of assuming these new titles and so that we can have this prestige, but then we kind of devalue our own mental health. We'd rather be the assistant principal of the school, completely stressed out and not able to fully give our full self for the title, as opposed to being an assistant teacher and being happy and really fulfilled in multiple areas of our life. So just make sure that you know what your boundaries are, and for everyone that will look different, but I would say honor those boundaries. And if you're finding yourself being emotionally exhausted and really just completely depleted on a consistent basis, that's a sign that you need to change something. And that usually will mean that you're being overworked.
Ultimately, I had to make a choice.
So I need to go. I just need to get out.
Feels like it's the end of the road.
I couldn't do it anymore. There's no other way to say it. I just couldn't do it anymore.
I'm leaving the classroom because I believe that it's what's best for my family.
The kind of teaching that I am passionate about is not there anymore.
Number 5 is do something creative. So I think it's really useful to utilize different parts of our brain. And I think that when we do something creative, it stimulates our brain in a different way and can also be very therapeutic. I just find that with whatever your passion is, in our case, it being teaching and education, I think it's really important to engage in the work from many different angles. So we can't look at teaching as solely just the work that we do in the classroom. And I know that teaching itself is creative as well, but I'm just saying have a project for yourself that you're working on that's relevant to teaching and education, and that can even be a grounds for which you can start an education or teaching related business on the side. Or even if it's just a project on the side that you want to work on that maybe isn't even for your students, or maybe is not even related to education, but it's just something that creates a safe space for you and is therapeutic. Something like that is really, really useful to making us feel alive and stimulated and also not burnt out. Because I think a lot of what burning out is about is also feeling the monotony of the everyday. I think a lot of the time when we feel like we're doing the same thing, we feel like we're stagnating and we feel like, oh, it's the same thing every single day. And I know with kids, like there's a lot of variation and you never know what's going to happen because kids are just so excited about life. And so it can be very dynamic with kids. But even with working kids in the classroom, just the routine of coming every day and the circle time and the lunch time and going outside, it can get really monotonous. And for some people, it can make them feel like they're just staying at one level. And so I think engaging in education on many different levels, where you're doing creative projects, when you're working with community organizations, where you're supporting teachers in schools, and you're also in the classroom, that can help you to really connect the educational field into something that's greater than just the teaching itself. The teaching is extremely important, but I think we've been conditioned to thinking that that is the only thing and that is the most important thing. And then after we finish being teachers, then we'll become administrators. But I think that there's ways that we can simultaneously do them all so that the time that we're engaged in education will be longer because we don't feel so burnt out.
Reached this breaking point. To me, it was a breaking point of this year with the walkout.
The walkout
started as a grassroots effort.
The culmination of years of frustration on the part of teachers